That's right, yeah. Well, the title of the album is kind of like that, like something ending, end of the Strangers, and something beginning from out of that, and hopefully a better sort of, beginning, a new beginning, taking it higher really. So that's kind of, and yeah, if I think of some of the songs, it definitely probably does have a bit of that theme, yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think that much because I was working on those songs. I think I started recording some of those songs in late 2015, early 2016, and I was recording them amongst other songs like One Way Ticket, Travelling Lighter. They were all just a big bunch of songs that I was working through, and some of them were old songs that I'd written like years earlier, but I'd never released them in any way. So it was me just kind of working through a lot of my back songs and bringing them up to date where necessary. And but I don't think those ones were directly informed by Kate's death. I think the Soul Jam ones I did earlier, just after her death, there was a few songs there that were perhaps had elements of that in it. Yeah. Well, I like End of the Strangers. To me, is actually a thing of bringing people closer. It's like, closing the chapter on kind of people being distant and people being like strangers, and trying to open a new chapter of people of more closeness and genuine interaction and so on. So it kind of, even though it talks about an ending, to me it's more like a positive statement, and of people coming together, being more close. Well, the picture was taken in Berlin by Kate, I think, 2008. It wasn't a specific album cover, it was just a random photo, and I'm not really sure why. I just liked that image, and I was playing around with it for other things, but I always just had in mind that image would be a suitable image for that title. Maybe if reading into it, I don't know, but maybe just either there's two people there and that you're not sure what is going to happen. Are they walking away from each other, or are they getting closer? So maybe there's something like that in it, but that wasn't really consciously. I wasn't picking it because of that. I just liked that image, and it seemed to fit the title for me. Well, that was another reason actually for including that image, because Mark was on it and he played bass on several tracks, so there was only a few images I could find of me and Mark together that worked as an album cover like that. So yeah, that's another part of it. Well, it was a bit like disjointed, I would say, working with him. He was busy with his job and things like this, and so he was having to fit in when he could do bass lines. I was basically just passing the songs on to him, and he would come up with a bass line and practice it, and then come back when he was ready, come to me, and I would record it, and the recording part was very quick, but to be honest, it felt more like a solo thing all along, even though at the time when we were recording the songs, it wasn't clear if it was going to be a David William album or a Soul Jam album, and that's why it ended up being called David William and Soul Jam, because it was at a point where there was possibilities to get a kind of band situation going, but there was things were also sort of falling apart a bit as well. So it was quite disjointed in the sense that I just supplied him with the songs. He rehearsed the bass lines. When he was ready, he came and recorded them. And in the recording sessions, 2 or 3 takes he would do, and then I would just edit it from that and figure it out and piece it together from that. So it wasn't really like a proper band thing. And that, I guess, the recording of that, during the process of that sort of those recording sessions, he came to a point where he felt he didn't want to be part of the music anymore. Because I guess, for a long number of years we had different tastes and so on, and different musical kind of directions. But strangely, he always came up with good bass lines for my songs. They always seemed to work. What we did seemed to work well together, but we were never really musically so close in that way. And to be honest, I don't think his heart was in it. I think he said that himself. His heart wasn't really in it by the end, and that was maybe about. I think we came to that point about early 2018, spring 2018, and then we agreed from then on. We kind of put the differences aside, agreed, and went on separately. I just finished up the rest of it myself, really, from those rough tracks, and used his bass where it was available. And in the other songs, I just played the bass myself on those ones. Yeah, there was some possibilities of female singers. There's a couple of people that kind of came in a little bit. And there was a few moments where it looked like there could be, a trio or 4 of us or whatever, with a female harmony, me playing guitar, singing lead vocals, and Mark on bass. But that was very short-lived. It was just a sort of glimpse of that, looking like it was possible. And obviously, I was very disappointed when that came to an end, because I thought there was potential there to do something. But I think it really just came down to that the people didn't have their heart in what I was doing, didn't have their heart in the music I was making, and so there's no point going on if it's like that. Yeah, there was actually. I could feel it at the time. So now it makes more sense where we've ended up in the world, but I could feel a kind of urgency to get certain messages out and get certain songs out at that time. Some of those songs, like Spitting Out the Shit, was a Soul Jam song originally. And the only reason for putting that song on the album was I was never happy with the Soul Jam version. That was the only time in Soul Jam where we gave a song away to an outside source to be mixed, and we tried it out, and it just didn't feel like Soul Jam. It just didn't have the vibe. It sort of stands out differently the way it was mixed. It's got a different sound. It's much more of a modern kind of sound, and that was not really where I was going with Soul Jam. So that, I always remember after doing that convinced me I would not work again with an outside source. I would either mix myself or just wait on someone coming in that was more dedicated to working. So I kind of wanted to put that song right on that album, and kind of try it again and do it like my way and the way and I think I got it better. I think I made it, I took it to a better level and took it more in the direction that it should have went in. So that one was like that. Conquering Lion, and what were the other songs you named?
Nobody Wants You to Be
Free. Nobody
Wants
You to Be Free was also a Soul Jam song. And that one, the reason for re-recording that was that when we recorded the first version in Europe, we only had acoustic instruments, and I always heard it in my song. It would in my head. It would eventually develop to be a kind of punky, kind of rock song like that. So that I was always intending to do that. It would have been Soul Jam. It would have been released as just sort of Soul Jam song had Soul Jam stayed together type thing. But I ended up putting that on that album. And Conquering Lion, that the melody and the chords and all that stuff with the music was basically written during the Soul Jam period in Europe. But the lyrics, I rewrote the lyrics and kind of updated that, and I guess they were informed by just what I was feeling around me at the time, and you know, those years 2016, 2017, 2018, that kind of just sort of what I was picking up around then. So yeah, that was those. Was there another song on that list? Before You Were You, yeah. Before You Were You was written in, I think it was about 2009, round about the same time as Spitting Out the Shit and Nobody Wants You to Be Free. But that one had never got a proper recording at all. Soul Jam never even got round to doing a recording of that one. So that one was always due a recording, and yeah, that was like more of a direct consciousness, trying to throw people back to the true nature of consciousness, really. And I guess they did feel a bit of an urgency to get that message out in these times, so yeah. Those lines were directly relating to people I'd been dealing with in those years, really. In the Soul Jam years, we didn't really get many people kind of coming towards us. It was almost the opposite thing. It was almost like we were getting ignored a lot of the time then. And that had its benefits as well as its, you know, drawbacks, obviously. But when I returned to Edinburgh and when I was on my own and started to play online and started to, you know, and go out and about and play out in the streets, I was attracting a lot of characters that were not really helpful or in harmony with what I was doing, and in fact many cases they seemed to be disruptive towards what I was trying for. So that, and after some time I became aware of that in a bigger sense, a wider sense, that these characters were it almost seemed like deliberately being sent to disrupt what I was trying to do and to set it back and so on. So that was just a reference to that, really. And the sickness on the streets, that takes on a whole new meaning nowadays. I often think of that line in terms of where we're at now, but I think I meant it more in a mental way, and just the way humans have like a lot of crap, and they don't really deal with it, and it just, you know, the world that you see is a result of that often. So it was not like literal sickness, but more a sickness of the mind, which still ties in with today, I would say, in some ways. Secret Life dates back to 2000. I wrote it originally then, and it was one of like many songs at that time that was like kind of stream of consciousness, and I used to write a lot that way, and I still do, but sometimes I've got a bit more direct now, but I used to write a lot stream of consciousness. I like that kind of way where you don't really sit down and you know, have an idea, you just sort of see what comes, and I did it with that song, and I never really knew what the song was about myself. It just sounded good, and I basically just updated it a little bit. It's pretty much the same song, I think, lyrically, but there's a few things that are updated, and I guess it's about, maybe my interpretation would be the world seems to have a lot of people hiding away and sort of secretive, and the internet kind of encourages that too. So there's that line in it about internet is crossed, and to me it's a song about trying to get back to humanity and trying to get back to like people interacting in person and up front with each other and direct, and not so much hiding themselves away. And you know, what the internet just encourages that, just makes it very easy for people to do that. So I guess that's all I could say about that song. Yeah, I know it's easy to say those things, but I did, I wrote that song in like 2009 or something, and it just became clear, from that point. But obviously I didn't anticipate it would get as crazy as it has over the last year. But it was kind of obvious it was going that way, and other people have been pointing that out as well, that the control was going to step up, and as more people realise freedom, the grip for control would tighten as well. So I guess those things are in that song. Yeah, it's sort of like about trying to push people back to, right, when you're born, you know nothing, yet you exist, you're a life, and you exist, and you're a fully functioning life. And the animals also are born in the same way, and they're fully functioning life, they go through a whole life. And the difference is that as humans, we get this knowledge taught to us, and we build an identity out of that knowledge. That seems to be what's different from humans to animals and plants and all other life, is we get taught these things. You get taught your name, you get taught, how old you are, you get taught if you're judged, if you're clever or if you're stupid by passing exams at school, blah blah blah. And it goes on like this, and we build an identity out of that, and that identity almost becomes our life, and we forget the original life. We forget that without all of that, you're a fully functioning life form. And so the find out what was there before the knowledge, and is basically just trying to point people back to that to look at what is there in you if you strip back all that knowledge, and all the things you've been taught. It's like, are you still somebody? Are you still something? What is there when you take away all the things you've been taught? And is there any value or intelligence in that? So that's kind of what that chorus part is referring to. Well, I think it's the first sort of proper album. I know I did One Way Ticket, Travelling Lighter. I released that before it, and I released The Days Before and a few other little kind of EP album type things. But that was probably the first proper album since One Way Ticket. And One Way Ticket, as I talked about in that interview, was produced by an external producer. And he at that time, I didn't have much instrumentation of myself I could do, and I didn't really have the full mixing capabilities and so on. So I had to hand it over to someone else and just basically concentrate on guitar and vocals. But I always had in my mind that I wanted to have more control over the arrangement. And for my liking, One Way Ticket, I would have liked it to be a little bit less polished and more rocky, not as rocky as End of the Strangers. End of the Strangers was deliberately made more rock, like a garage rock sort of raw type sound. I was deliberately going for that, and I wouldn't have went for that on One Way Ticket. It would have been always been a pop rock album, but I would have liked to have made it more rocky, but it couldn't really be done the way that I was working with the producer. And also what I had available, I mean, all the guitars on that album were recorded with like a processor, you know, an emulator, one of those external, like, I can't remember, I think it was a Vox thing I used, but there was no real amps or anything. I couldn't record with an amp at that time, so I couldn't really get the sound that I would have liked to have got. So End of the Strangers was basically my first chance. I had a few pedals, not very many, but I had a few. I had an amp and so on for the first time. So it was my chance to try to do that and record something more raw. And I deliberately didn't want to polish it up. If I do something else in the future, I may make a slightly more polished thing. But that one, I just went for the garage rock type of psychedelic sound and left it a bit raw, rough and ready kind of thing. It was difficult, if I'm being honest. I was not in ideal living circumstances, and there was a lot of disruption going on, and I recorded it all in a very small room, basically in a bedroom, and I couldn't really fit much in there at all, so it was very cramped, and I did it all pretty much on my own after the original sort of sessions with Mark and doing it, those tracks. The rest of it I just finished up all on my own, and so it was quite a difficult, lonesome kind of period as well, because I just had to get on with it, and I didn't really have any much else going on, but maybe that gave something to it as well, I don't know.